Greetings. How are you?
Great, wonderful, and very excited. My name is Mama Mawusi Ashikir. Here with Baba Montu Ashikir of the Body Temple Institute, and we are elated to welcome our elder Baba Wekesa Madzimoyo of Aya Educational Institute to talk about his lecture that he's going to do nation, helping us in the Ma'afa to understand this new paradigm shift that's happening. And who will lead the way with Harriet Araminta to lead us road to liberation, mental liberation, up out of this enslavement. Baba Wekesa is going to the script and hip us to how to operate in this new paradigm shift. Baba, tell us what you're bringing in regards
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mama and Baba Montu. I am coming to Cincinnati. We call it a WHB Juneteenth celebration. That is, it's Juneteenth weekend. It's the weekend, the only weekend particularly designated for us to celebrate our freedom. And who should lead us into that other than Araminta, who led so many of us to freedom? And so that's going to be Friday night. It's a free event. It's a community event. We also are honoring local heroes and sheroes as well as honoring Araminta. And it's only appropriate because Araminta was an ordinary sister doing extraordinary things. And it's so important that we flip the script. We all know that Araminta is going to be on the $20 bill. Some people are irritated by it. Some people are elated by it. Some people are insulted by it. Whatever your position, one thing we can all agree on, we're going to have to control the narrative. We're going to have to control the story that's in our community. When that $20 hits, we want the stories that come up in our children's minds and our people's minds to be the warrior story that will inspire us to be warriors, the healer story that will inspire us to heal, the builder stories that will inspire us to build so that we can get up out of here. And we can flip the script. There's an opportunity to be proactive in this. I don't care about what their agenda is. I care about what our agenda is in our community. And so we start with that on Friday night. And I'm excited about it because Araminta is the quintessential warrior, healer, builder that we don't know but about that much about. Okay, we love her. And we don't know she comes from a family of 11. We don't know her mother was a revolutionary. Her dad was revolutionary. We don't know about her brothers. There's so much about her we don't know. And we still love her just with what we do know. Imagine when we learn so much more of her warrior story, her healer story, her builder story. I'm excited to be there on next Friday, a week from now, 17th.
Yeah, like we are bubbling with excitement here too, and in anticipation for just to conceive of Harriet Tubman being on the $20 bill. We don't know whether to take it as a slap in the face to the event. And so one of the things that when I talked to you, you gave me so much energy in relation to seeing her, how that can awaken our ancestral memory. Baba, let me share with everybody what you shared with me in relation to that.
Okay, well, I've been talking a lot, so I don't know exactly which part I told you, but part of what...
just awakening that ancestral knowledge.
Okay, yeah, okay,
you know
great.
what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
One of the things that it really doesn't matter at this point whether folks intended it as a slap in the face. Personally, it is. You don't put Araminta on one side and her enemy, Andrew Jackson, on the other side and call it some kind of commemoration. Except for we're not used to this kind of attack. We're used to an attack that says you're denied, you can't come in, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. We're used to that. We're not used to the kind of attack that says, come on in, we're going to hold you up. You see, because that kind of attack is we'll hold you up and we'll redefine what you mean. I'll give you an example. Many of us, when we think of Martin Luther King, we're not excited when we see the image about going, his image doesn't excite us to go and rail against the 10% of the people who own and control 90% of the wealth. His image doesn't remind us to tell our children and our people never go to fight in any imperialistic war. His image doesn't tell us that we need to be a drum major for justice. His image has been flipped so that it tells us to be a prince of peace. And he was a prince of peace, and we need to be peaceful and nonviolent. He said, I want to be remembered as a drum major for justice. So that's an example where someone who's been, whether you agree with his particular politics or his strategies or not, he was a courageous man. He was a man who lived for Black people. And his image has been manipulated to be a prince of peace versus a drum major for justice, etc. Well, we know that they're going to try to use Araminta's image in a similar way, for her to be a suffragette, for her to be an abolitionist, for her to be a pro-democracy. Araminta was pro-liberation of Black people, and that was it. She said, I got a right to two things, liberty or death, and by God, I'm going to have one or the other. And so come in here, how we can tap into that ancestral energy of Araminta, and not just to be inspired, but also to be instructed. Her strategies were amazing. She was a master of disguise. She was a general. They'll say she was a scout and a spy, and she was also a commander and at the war. And we're going to learn about her again, her warrior story, her healer story, her builder story. There are many different stories to tell about Araminta, as it is about any of our lives. And what will be glossed over, and I don't care about what they're going to do. I think it's so important. What I care about, what happens in the minds of my children and my people in my community. And we can control that narrative. And that's what we're doing. We're on a nationwide mission to control the narrative in our community so that it actually, when they intend one thing, it actually flips and something else happens, something that we want to happen. So that's what that's about. And it's also a great introduction, that Friday night introduction. I mean, what better way to kick off honoring local heroes and sheroes than by honoring them in conjunction with the work of Araminta. And then Araminta's warrior healer builder work that we learn about on Friday then allows us to go into Saturday so that we begin to learn how do you do the kind of healing that she did, because she had to heal herself. Now, make no mistake about it. The abuse of captivity and the abuse of oppression had also set up falsehoods in her own mind, just as they have in our minds. And she had to heal herself of those falsehoods that come out of the abused self, to use a term by Ikwe Ama. And we'll learn about that. And then we'll learn on Saturday how we can begin to rid ourselves of the falsehoods based on the abuse that we have received. Because if we do not heal, then we can't build effectively. If we don't heal, we can't fight effectively. Araminta knew that, so she had to heal herself and did. And after healing herself, we began to get Araminta the warrior and Araminta the healer. And so it sets up a model for us on Saturday from 1 to 5, where we begin to do that kind of healing work, as well as learn the kind of skills that she had and how we can implement them now. Not that we ought to. Now, I'm gonna just be clear. A lot of people are long on ought tos. We ought to do this, we ought to do that, we ought to do this. It's not that it's not true, it's just that we're short on the how-tos most times. And part of what we do on a 4-hour session from 1 to 5 is we dig into how do we do that right here, right now. Not when white folks change, not when all Black people are unified. How do we begin to do the fighting and the healing and the building that's necessary?
Forgive me. That's exactly what I was asking. That's exactly the answer to the question. That's exactly the answer that's in our minds. That are we being patronized? Are we being, ceremonialized? We need to know that, and we need that eldership to explain to us how we should be responding, how we should be as a unified and have a unified front with that. I'm grateful for that wisdom, and I want you all to come out to see and hear even more about what we are, how we're looking at, how we should look at Harriet Tubman, how we should look at ourselves as warriors, as healers, and as builders in the Ma'afa today.
Those of you who haven't had the esteemed privilege of meeting Baba Wekesa, only he can pull off the things that he does. I said, wow, how's he gonna build this and build this with Araminta?
Yeah.
I mean, but I had no doubt that he would do it, and here yet, and I'm already excited because that is something that we become in a lot of ways. As you started teaching us years ago with being a warrior in the building. So it's so very vital. We're going to keep these communities, our families, and then our communities together. These concepts. Baba Wekesa, how would you say that systematic oppression relationships with one another?
Well, part of what happens with systematic oppression is, well, a couple of things. One, we adapt to it. And many times we want to challenge oppression, but we don't know how, or it's too hard, or we feel alone. And what happens is that energy that we want to direct out gets directed in. Sometimes inward to me, okay, that is inside. Sometimes in my family. So I want to challenge. So when I hear 16 bullets, Laquan McDaniel, when I hear hands up, don't shoot, when I hear, I can't breathe, on and on and on, during those times, I want to grab somebody, okay? But maybe I'm not organized to do that. I'm not prepared to do that. I want to do that. I'm angry and I should be, and I'm pissed and I should be, and I've not organized the outlet for that, or we've not as a community. And so what happens is then it implodes. Imploding for us brothers is often prostate cancer. Imploding for sisters is often fibroid tumors. Okay, and then it also can explode, but rarely does it explode to our oppressors against it most times explodes around those people who love and care about us. Okay, and then we don't know why and what happened and how to fix it. That's one thing that's really important. And this is why if we're going to create the kind of trust that we need, we're going to have to know how to handle challenging people and the policies and the practices that oppress us, all right? And then how to join together with that. And I'll say that slowly because many people, when they talk warrior, they talk many different things, and you can talk many different things, and it's wonderful. We need to be warriors. When Aya talks about us being warriors, or that part of us, we mean challenging actively people, policies, and practices that oppress us. That's when I have the warrior part working. Now, when I have the healer part working, then I'm healing myself and I'm healing the conflicts in my relationships and among my siblings, among my spouses, intimate relationships, in my organizations, in my community organizations. Now, that may indeed be revolutionary healing. That is healing so that we can better fight. And when I'm doing that healing work, I'm not at war with my brothers and sisters. And too often, when we're hurt, betrayed by our brothers or sisters, we act like we're at war with them. So again, it's displaced. And then the building part, the key part of building is building trust. And one of the things that gets in the way of building trust, and this is the subtle oppression again, is this emotional inauthenticity. Now, the essence of white folks and white folks' way is to be inauthentic. They'll tell you this is for public consumption only, and this is the real deal. And this is for public consumption for y'all to kind of view and hear and believe, and this is the real thing. Marumba Ani talks about that. She calls it the rhetorical ethic. Well, if we're talking about that happening in us because I am trained to represent or read my feelings one way, when in fact they're not the authentic ones. I'm often, as a man, trained, socialized, I mean, when I say trained, to read sad, to respond to my sad feelings as if they're angry feelings or as if they are powerful. So it's like, I ask you for your number and you don't give me your number. I really been wanting your number. I've been looking at you for a while. I'm a good guy, you know what I mean? You know, and you don't give me your number. So really, my authentic feeling is sad and maybe a little scared. It's not going to come out like that. I'm not even going to read it like that. My initial emotional response that I had been taught by my oppressors is to show up mad or powerful. Bumper. Who she thinks she is anyway? She thinks she all that blah, 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 blah. And so what happens is because of that falsified emotion, then I'm not authentic with me. I can't be authentic with her or sisters or brothers, and when particularly when there's conflict, and therefore trust is eroded. Now, y'all, trust is the key. We know this. We can't build unity in our family. We can't build unity in a business partnership, in an organizational partnership, an organizational movement if we don't trust each other. And here we can intend to and want to. And we've also been socialized to respond in false ways, inauthentically to our emotions. And that inauthentic response is programmed. It's scripted. It is not random. Okay. Just as Amos Wilson taught us about the falsification of African consciousness, what we will teach you about to go along with that is the falsification of our emotional responses, which makes it almost impossible for us to build the kind of trust that we need to build.
That leads us to the statement that you placed in a meme, which was Warzone or Love Zone. You know, in our personal relationships, you know, those sad, mad, and scared feelings, peaceful, powerful, you know, and joyful, those different emotions are, I kind of see them as time bombs placed in our relationship. Landmines, right. How can also talk about healing for men and healing for women? These are also the for men only classes and workshop that we got going on also, as well as the for women only workshop with Mama Afia Madzimoyo. Please give us a snippet of how we can do that. What's going on? Also, Bob.
Yeah, and just for those who don't understand why the Body Temple is doing this interview as a healing institute, because healing is more than just taking herbs and doing fast and all of these things. Our emotional and spiritual health is very also important to our overall state of health.
Yeah.
So this is legitimate healing work. This is not a gimmick. This will affect your mind, body, and your spirit.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, this is not a gimmick. This is hard work. And it's hard because many times we learn these particular patterns from our fathers and our mothers. My particular pattern of substituting one emotion for another, while it originated with Europeans, I learned it from my father. While he was loving me and doing loving things for me and supporting me. That makes it really hard because I have to know how to separate the contamination from the authentic love. Know how to continue to take his love and separate the contamination that was injected in him based on socialized oppression and abuse. And similarly, I learned substitution also from my mother. While she fed me my milk, I learned it. This is why it's not, you can't do this with a cute cliche, okay? That's why we take the time to begin to understand how oppression has been injected in my family line, how it has come down to me, so that I can both separate it and continue to stay connected to my family and family line and reject the abuse that come along with it. I want to slow that down because it's so important. Continue to take the love and the connection to my family, from my family, and stay connected to my family. And at the same time, how do I separate and reject the abuse that has been passed down with their love? so important. Or else, if I don't do that, then I will pass that abuse right on to my children. And so what turns a relationship into from a love zone to a war zone? Let me give you an example. My father and mother had families, had different adaptations to oppression. My mother's family line, in order for them to survive oppression, they developed a rebellious kind of, I won't be the last one to die kind of response. So if you come up in here, I won't be the last one to die, all right? And that was what they decided they had to do to keep white folks off of them at a certain level. My father's side of the family developed another kind of line of adaptation, and that is to stay under the radar screen. All right, to stay on the radar. They weren't punks or anything. It's just that they weren't going to be out front. They weren't going to be boisterous. They weren't going to be the leaders of the march. Now, if you get hurt in the march, they'll move heaven and earth to come and get you and take you in an ambulance or put you in their car and get you, back to the community. At the same time, there are two different strategies of adaptations to oppression. And we don't get to choose what families we're born in one sense. In another sense, of course, we do. We certainly don't get to choose the particular adaptations to oppression. And so let's take those two adaptations to oppression. One, like, get out of here, it's going to be you or me. The other is, let me see how I can stay under the radar screen and not ruffle as many feathers. All right, my mother and father are going out to a restaurant. Let's make it a fish restaurant. Let's make it so a white person is a waiter. Let's say a young white girl. And my mother notices that so another white couple that came in after my father and she did is being waited on and served. My father's kind of oblivious to it because he's just waiting and he's glad to be there and whatever. My mother's very keen to any kind of indiscretion like that. And what does my mother want to do when she sees this kind of discrimination, this kind of racism, this kind of oppression? And what does my dad want to do when she points it out? What do you think? All right, you've got time to think about it. My mother wants to, of course, call it out, either get up and leave, call everything out right then, call out the racism, challenge it, etc. My father says, no, let's keep it quiet. It's okay. It's going to be all right. We're going to let it go. We're going to let it pass. You don't know, maybe the folks had just stepped out. Any kind of thing to stay under the radar screen. All right. So now they got a conflict between them. Does my mother just say, okay, I'll just do it your way and chill and continue to take the abuse that she sees? If so, then when they get in the car, if they manage to make it through the meal and get in the car, what's she saying? It's just turned into a war zone. If you keep on letting people walk over you, it's going to be like that. They'll walk over you for your whole life. You got to stand up. You got to, because for her, in the back of her mind, she already has this adaptation. If you don't challenge it and you don't challenge it hard and first and quickly, they will continue to mess over you. So she's now going to start talking about his mama and his family and everything. War zone. Now let's go back. Let's wind it back. Let's say my father follows my mother's lead and she just stands up, cusses them out, challenges it, storms out of the place. So my dad and now she in the car. What is he saying? I'm hungry. Okay, you're gonna get us all killed. Don't you know where we were? Did you see them people over in the corner? Okay. So literally, an act by some white waitress, doesn't matter whether it's intentional or intentional, an oppressive act connects to and stimulates their adaptations to oppression. And since they don't even know what those are, this woman, her small oppressive act turns this ride home from a love zone to a war zone. And that happens over and over again. That's just a plate of food. What about 16 bullets? What about hands up? Don't shoot. What about what we see going on with our children and our youth and ourselves? What about when I'm stopped unjustly by the police? What happens? What do I do with that? Does it just go away when I come in the door? See, oppression, both that has come down our family line and the oppression that's stimulated based on current oppression, turns often, too often, turns our love zones into war zones. And if we don't have the tool set to recognize it, then we end up blaming each other and wondering what happened, because we actually made very much love each other, but don't know how to handle the oppression when it connects especially to the oppression that we've learned as adaptations down our family line. That's one way.
You know what's interesting? There is an African proverb that says, when the fool comes to the game, the players have dispersed. I feel like Baba Wekesa is coming to basically help us to know how the game is played so we don't get played. That's important.
It is. It is. Well, you know,
powerful interview. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I don't want to keep people too long. I really thank y'all so much for helping to make this happen, to promote this. We have people coming from Dayton. We have people coming from Lexington, Kentucky. Hopefully we can get some people from Columbus as well. For this Juneteenth WHB weekend, I do want to say that there also is a time from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock that's specially dedicated to African-centered education. For those who are homeschooling our children, for those who, whether you're doing it full-time or you're doing it part-time, whether you're doing weekend school or part-time, we're all the first educators for our children. So homeschooling or independent education, African-centered education, it's dedicated. In fact, we will have some IA students who are in the Cincinnati area making some presentations so that you get to see some of what African-centered education is the IA way. And whether you're a homeschool or not, you'll learn some tools and techniques about how best to educate our children, how to be learning directors, even when I'm not the teacher. See, as a parent, I'm the first teacher, but I'm always the learning director. I may say, you know what, Brother Montu, you do this better than I do, so I want you to teach my children this. Notice I'm directing, I'm choosing him. Okay, I may say, you know what, I want him to choose, I want him to do it because I also like what he's going to get, what they're going to get being with him. Okay, I may say over here, I want my child to go over here. I'm always, even when I'm not teaching them the subject matter, I'm the learning director. Okay, and we learn how do you do that effectively, because we're going to have to do that to get our children through this crazy maze, because you want to talk about the game. You know, this is a straight up, y'all, school to prison pipeline. And I don't just mean public school either. I mean also other private schools, all right? We're gonna have to know how to give our children the kind of independent African-centered education. And that often starts with healing of ourselves of the miseducation that we receive. Let's get real, okay? I know I've had to do it. I didn't learn with the things that I'm teaching. I had to spend time learning, teaching myself. All right, I wasn't taught in elementary school. I wasn't taught in junior high school. Wasn't taught in what we called it then junior high school. Wasn't taught in high school or college. I had to learn these things. Okay, and so we get to look at our weekend school and different options that IA has, and that's on Saturday from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And now, for those of you who are really ready, at 9 o'clock, for those who want to become certified to tell the Araminta Warrior Hill story, build a story. Those there in Cincinnati and Lexington and Columbus and Dayton who want to be certified by IA to tell the story that you hear on Friday, then that process, it won't be finished on Saturday morning, but we'll begin that process at the Seymour Amphitheater, okay, at 9 o'clock. And of course, people I think know or may know that we're also on Friday night going to be at the Lions Den Cultural Center. Then on Saturday, after coming from the amphitheater, we're going to be at the Lions Den again. And then on Saturday evening for the brother only and sister only set. And please come, y'all. You know, please, because we got to take care of our relationships. whether you're in a relationship or currently or not. I mean, there's no such thing as not being in a relationship. It's just the kind of relationship you're in. Okay. And so these are some things that we need to know, and we take some of the tools that we have learned from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and we begin to apply them in brother-only spaces and sister-only spaces. So we'll break into separate groups and do that work. So that's why we call it a super Juneteenth WHB weekend. And I'm looking forward to being with you. Thank y'all so much for having us, me and Mama Fia and
Cincinnati, you heard what Baba Wekesa said, Cincinnati. Lexington's going to be in the house. Dayton, Cincinnati, Columbus going to be in the house. You got to represent now. You can't have more people coming from out of town than from here in town. Cincinnati, show up. It'll be well worth your while.
All right.
For this marathon of food and this definite feast for our minds, and helping us to expand and bridge to make this paradigm shift that our communities, our families, our individual selves desperately need.
Thank you all very much. Looking forward to it. I'll take care.